Welcome to The Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because we are going to unpack something truly fascinating. We're decoding the final chapter of the book of Isaiah, Isaiah 66. And what we're going to see is a stunning cause and effect narrative that literally spans thousands of years. We're talking ancient warnings, dramatic historical realities, especially around that 70 AD temple destruction, and a vision of ultimate eternal hope. It's a breathtaking sequence of events, and we're going to break the whole thing down step by step.
Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. We'll start with the defilement of the Second Temple, see exactly how that leads into the harrowing judgment of 70 AD, and then witness the miraculous rebirth of a nation. After that, we'll explore the incredible comfort promised in Jerusalem and wrap it all up with a global millennial peace.
So, Section 1, the Second Temple defiled. Now, to really grasp the immense judgments and miracles in this chapter, we've got to look at the root cause. Think about it. After Israel returned from captivity in Babylon, they set right out to rebuild their temple and reestablish their worship. But over time, things went terribly, terribly wrong. By the time Christ arrived, the temple and its services had become completely defiled, basically a den of thieves that the Lord ultimately rejected. So, opening this prophetic chapter, Isaiah chapter 66, verses 1 and 2 state, "Thus saith the Lord, the heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. Where is the house that ye build unto me? And where is the place of my rest? For all those things hath mine hand made. But to this man will I look, even to him that is poor and of a contrite spirit, and trembleth at my word." What a profound statement, right? The creator of the entire universe is essentially asking, what physical building could you possibly construct that could contain me? God is making it crystal clear here. He doesn't need a structure of stone. What he truly values, and what he's actually looking for, is a humble, contrite heart that deeply reveres his word.
But instead of those humble hearts, well, here's what was actually happening. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 3 states, "He that killeth an ox is as if he slew a man. He that sacrificeth a lamb, as if he cut off a dog's neck. He that offereth an oblation, as if he offered swine's blood. He that burns incense, as if he blessed an idol." I mean, wow, that is a horrifying reality. God is looking directly at their religious services, the sacrifices, the incense, the whole shebang, and he's declaring them completely polluted. Because the people's hearts were corrupt, God viewed their hypocritical, going through the motions temple services as absolute abominations.
So this sets up a timeless contrast, and it's a completely vital takeaway for us today. On one hand, you have the outward ritual, killing an ox, burning incense, things that, on the surface, looked incredibly pious. But God saw the spiritual reality on the other side. To him, it was literally as if they were committing murder or worshiping an idol. Empty outward rituals mean absolutely nothing if the inner soul persists in wickedness and actually delights in abominations. It's all about the heart.
And because of this hypocrisy, there's a severe consequence. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 4 states, "I also will choose their delusions, and will bring their fears upon them. Because when I called, none did answer. When I spake, they did not hear. But they did evil before mine eyes, and chose that in which I delighted not." This is just a stark, sobering truth. Because the people stubbornly refused to listen when God reached out, he declares that he will actually give them over to their own delusions. The very things they dreaded the most, those would be brought right upon them as a direct consequence of their rebellion.
Which brings us to Section 2, the 70 AD judgment.
We're transitioning now from the spiritual cause to the harrowing effect, the climax of God's warnings actually manifesting in real human history. This wasn't just ancient poetry. It became a devastating historical reality. The internal division was incredibly stark. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 5 states, "Hear the word of the Lord, ye that tremble at his word. Your brethren that hated you, that cast you out for my name's sake, said, Let the Lord be glorified, but he shall appear to your joy, and they shall be ashamed." Here we see the dynamic clearly at play. Those few who actually did tremble at God's word, the early Christian believers, were persecuted. They were hated and cast out of their own synagogues by their brethren. And the tragic irony of it all, the persecutors mockingly thought they were doing God a service.
But divine justice was coming. A thundering reality is described next. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 6 states, "A voice of noise from the city, a voice from the temple, a voice of the Lord that rendereth recompense to his enemies." This voice of noise, echoing from the city and the temple, represents God's swift, undeniable intervention. It's the sound of divine recompense being poured out on those who turn the temple into a corrupted institution.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how scholars interpret that noise. While some see it as the sounds of Jerusalem being rebuilt,
The context deeply, deeply mirrors the horrifying destruction of Jerusalem and the temple by the Romans in 70 AD. Just imagine that terrifying scene, the shrieks of the inhabitants running for shelter, violently mixed with the triumphant shouts of Roman soldiers. God's warnings in the earlier verses were definitively and tragically fulfilled. The physical house they placed all their pride in was left completely desolate.
Moving on to Section 3, A Nation Reborn.
But thankfully, the story doesn't end in ruins. Out of that desolation comes a breathtaking promise of hope and restoration. If we map out Israel's staggering historical journey, we see the return from Babylon in 538 BC, which served as a sort of prototype. Then we have the devastating Roman destruction in 70 AD that scattered the people. But look at the very end of the timeline, 1948 AD, the sudden, miraculous rebirth of the nation.
This leads right into an unprecedented prophecy regarding that rebirth. Isaiah chapter 66, verses 7 and 8 state, "Before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who hath heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children." It's basically asking, has anyone ever seen a nation spring up instantly? Yet that is exactly what happened in May 1948. A rapid, almost effortless reemergence of a nation, gathering its exiled children from across the globe in a single day.
Next up, Section 4, Comfort in Jerusalem.
Following this miraculous rebirth, the imagery shifts to something incredibly vivid and tender. Isaiah chapter 66, verses 12 and 13 state, "For thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will extend peace to her like a river. As one whom his mother comforteth, so will I comfort you, and ye shall be comforted in Jerusalem." Notice how God isn't just a distant ruler here. He actually compares his care to that of a loving mother. He promises to comfort his people with the exact same warmth, security, and absolute assurance that a mother provides to her own child.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of that promise. We aren't just talking about a little bit of relief here, it is an overwhelming abundance. Peace flowing continuously like a river. The wealth and honor of the Gentiles pouring in like a stream. And the people being nurtured, carried on the hip, and dandled on the knees. It is a massive promise of total physical and spiritual restoration for Jerusalem and her inhabitants.
Finally, Section 5, Judgment and Millennial Peace. Now we're entering the final visionary sequence of our explainer. This part reveals the ultimate divine reckoning. Isaiah chapter 66, verses 15 and 16 state, "For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many." You see, the restoration of the faithful happens right alongside a swift, consuming judgment against the wicked. That imagery of fire and whirlwinds, it symbolizes an unstoppable, purifying force where the Lord holds final judgment over all humanity.
But out of that intense purification comes a massive global regathering. God declares he will gather all nations and tongues to witness his glory. Survivors and messengers will be sent out to the farthest reaches of the ancient world, places like Tarshish and Javan, just to declare God's fame. And look at the diversity of transport. Exiled brethren brought back on horses, in chariots, and on mules. It is a highly orchestrated divine event where even Gentiles are brought in and given sacred roles as priests and Levites. Talk about a total paradigm shift.
And where does this all lead? To the ultimate promise. Isaiah chapter 66, verses 22 and 23 state, "For as the new heavens and the new earth which I will make shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord." This, my friends, is the millennial peace, a renewed creation that is completely eternal, where humanity enters into a perpetual, unceasing cycle of worship. All flesh universally acknowledging the true God. Yet, the chapter closes on a very sobering note. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 24 states, "And they shall go forth, and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me. For their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be an abhorring unto all flesh." Amidst the perfect peace, there remains this stark, visible warning.
The unending consequences of those who willfully rebelled serve as an eternal deterrent, constantly reminding the renewed earth of the immense cost of transgression.
And what happened to the man who delivered these unyielding, visionary truths? Well, a striking rabbinic tradition tells us that the prophet Isaiah paid the ultimate earthly price. Fleeing the wicked king Manasseh, Isaiah purportedly hid inside a cedar tree. The king then ordered the tree to be sawn in half, and Isaiah was martyred. He laid down his life to ensure these warnings and these incredible promises reached us across the millennia.
Which brings everything full circle to us right now. Looking back at the hypocrisy that caused the devastating 70 AD temple destruction, we have to ask ourselves, are we relying on outward rituals and building empty monuments of stone, or are we offering the Creator what He truly desires, a humble and contrite heart? This concludes our overview.